Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has continued his phone conversations with world leaders with a video and written press statement on Saturday saying that the world leaders must ensure that the Russian President Vladimir Putin is not allowed to deceive the world again, insisting that Putin has used Russian army, intelligence services and mercenaries over 30 years to bring death to America, Europe, Africa, Middle East, Syria. This, Zelenskyy stated after he began special defense campaign with phone conversations with world leaders following strained relationship with one of the countries that has majorly assisted Ukraine in its defense against Russia since 2022 when the war began. United States, U.S. President Donald Trump, who threatened to stop military aid to Ukraine, claiming that Ukraine started the war it knows it cannot win, calling President Volodymyr Zelenskyy a modestly successful comedian and a dictator that deceived the immediate past U.S. President Joe Biden to commit over $350 billion of U.S. taxpayers' money on a war the North America country will not get any profit in return, with Ukrainian President accusing Donald Trump of disinformation and saying that Putin-led Russia has intensified attacks and launched massive bomb destructions on Ukraine cities and villages during the week of Donald Trump's outburst. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, while responding to the accusations made against him by President Donald Trump, said that the U.S. president is living in disinformation space. Joe Biden is a very dumb man, President Trump said, criticizing former President Biden's handling of the Russia-Ukraine conflict and his approach to Vladimir Putin during an appearance on The Brian Kilmeade Show during the week. President Donald Trump had said on Tuesday that Ukraine was responsible for Russia's invasion of the country 3 years ago, arguing Kyiv could have made a deal to avoid the conflict. "You should have never started it," Trump said of Ukraine while criticizing President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who had expressed concern that his country was not included in talks between the US and Russia in Saudi Arabia. "I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going very well. But today I heard, oh, well, we weren't invited." "Well, you've been there for 3 years," Trump told reporters at his Mar-a-Lago resort. "You should have never started it. You could have made a deal," adding, "I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way." While speaking with American governors on Friday, President Donald Trump said that, "I've had very good talks with Putin, and I've had not such good talks with Ukraine." President Donald Trump's envoy to Ukraine and Russia said on Friday that he had held extensive and positive discussions with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy about the 3-year war with Russia and praised the Ukrainian leader as an embattled and courageous leader of a nation at war. Retired U.S. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, who traveled to Kyiv on Wednesday and whose planned news conference with Zelenskyy on Thursday was changed at the last minute to a simple photo opportunity, struck a positive tone after what he said on the social platform X was a long and intense day of talks with Ukraine's senior leadership. His comments marked a departure from recent rebukes of Zelenskyy by Trump and other senior U.S. officials that appeared to indicate an abrupt deterioration of relations. Trump called Zelenskyy a dictator without elections and warned him that he would better move fast to negotiate an end to the war or risk not having a nation to lead. According to President Zelenskyy, security guarantees are what unite the vast majority. Europe, America, and all our global partners need a shared understanding of how to ensure that Putin can never deceive the world again, and that Russia can no longer bring death to other nations, from Ukraine and Europe to Syria, the Middle East, and Africa. Over the past 30 years, we have seen far too much destruction and loss, all caused by Russia, its army, its intelligence services, its mercenaries. The world needs real security guarantees, and I am grateful to everyone for their support. Right now, we are talking with all our partners about security guarantees and concrete forms of support, actions, assistance, decisions, and messages. Thank you for all your support. On Sunday, Zelensky said that, every day, our people stand against aerial terror. On the eve of the third anniversary of the full-scale war, Russia launched 267 attack drones against Ukraine, the largest attack since Iranian drones began striking Ukrainian cities and villages. In total, nearly 1,150 attack drones, more than 1,400 guided aerial bombs and 35 missiles of various types were launched this week. I thank everyone who repels such attacks on a daily basis, our aviation, anti-aircraft missile troops, electronic warfare units and mobile fire groups of the Air Force and Defense Forces. I also thank those on the ground who save lives and respond to the aftermath of shelling, the State Emergency Service, medics, and the National Police. The war continues. Everyone capable of helping with air defense must work to enhance the protection of human life. We must do everything possible to bring a lasting and just peace to Ukraine. This is achievable through the unity of all partners. We need the strength of all of Europe, the strength of America, the strength of everyone who seeks lasting peace. I thank all our partners who help us and understand this. Some close watchers said that the escalating situation in Europe is reaching a dangerous new level, and it seems that all the people are being left in the dark following Donald Trump publicly blaming Ukraine for the war, and Russian state TV is reportedly and openly broadcasting nuclear attack scenarios against the US. Trump was reportedly furious with Zelensky during negotiations, threatening to cut off military aid because Ukraine refused to cave to Russia's demands. Top European leaders like Germany's Friedrich Merz are calling out Trump for pushing Russian propaganda, flipping the blame onto Ukraine instead of the aggressor, Vladimir Putin. Even former Vice President Mike Pence has stepped up, fact-checking Trump and making it clear that Ukraine did not start this war, Russia did. At the same time, Russia is ramping up military movements, and European leaders are scrambling to respond. Italy is now sending Centaur armored vehicles to Ukraine, and Ukraine itself is developing new AI-powered drone swarms to counter Russian advances. High-stakes negotiations are underway between Washington and Kyiv over military aid, resource agreements, and long-term security strategies. But here's the kicker: House Republicans are actively stalling new support for Ukraine, pushing the same pro-Putin rhetoric that's spreading across right-wing media. The European Union is expected to approve a massive aid package on soon, but the US political infighting is giving Russia exactly what it wants: more time, more power, and a chance to push the world toward an even bigger catastrophe. One of the close watchers, retired Major Richard Oyeda, who is a former US state senator. New York Times also reported how President Donald Trump is apparently proud of his quest to push Ukraine to sign a mineral deal of $500 billion, which some observers said would amount to almost 50% of the entire Ukrainian resources, in exchange for the US to continue to support or assist the victim of war, Ukraine, in its defensive fight against Russia. This agreement can add value to our relations. What matters most is getting the details right to ensure it truly works, Zelensky said in a social media post on Friday. The signs of easing tensions only underscored how Mr. Trump has struck an overtly transactional and mercantilist stance toward resolving a conflict, started by Russia, that carries profound security implications for Europe and the future of the transatlantic alliance. Mr. Trump and his allies had waged an all-out pressure campaign against the Ukrainian president, suggesting the United States might abandon the war-torn country and side with Russia, which launched an invasion into its western neighbor 3 years ago. During a radio interview Friday with the Fox News host Brian Kilmeade, Mr. Trump said he was tired of hearing that Russia was to blame for the war, as he painted Mr. Zelensky and his predecessor, President Joseph R. Biden, as the true problems. Every time I say, oh, it's not Russia's fault, I always get slammed by the fake news, Mr. Trump said. But I'm telling you, Biden said the wrong things. Zelensky said the wrong things. Mr. Trump emphasized he wanted rare earth and other minerals from Ukraine in exchange for any support from the United States. Who knows what rare earth is worth? You know, but at least it's something, Mr. Trump said. In the Oval Office, Mr. Trump continued to rail against Ukraine and Mr. Biden for not extracting more demands out of the country. Biden just gave them money. There was no loan, there was no security, was no anything, Mr. Trump said. So we're going to either sign a deal, or there's going to be a lot of problems with them. So we're going to sign a deal to get security, because we have to do that. Since Mr. Trump began his verbal assault, Kyiv has focused on strengthening its negotiating position as the United States and Russia open talks on ending the war, with or without Ukraine's involvement. In a flurry of diplomacy on Thursday and Friday, Mr. Zelensky spoke with half a dozen leaders in Europe and Canada to show up other sources of support. Kyiv and Moscow engaged in direct talks early in the invasion, but since April of 2022 have negotiated only over prisoner of war exchanges and to return Ukrainian children from Russia. The idea of trading natural resources for U.S. assistance was first put forward by Ukraine, but Mr. Zelensky balked when the U.S. proposal suggested that Kyiv provide access to profits from 50% of the country's minerals and energy resources. Mr. Zelensky had also objected that the deal included no American security commitments. Several aides to Mr. Zelensky believe that a new version of the agreement under discussion on Thursday addresses those concerns, and have now advised Mr. Zelensky to sign it, a person familiar with discussions in the Ukrainian government about the U.S. proposal said on Friday. The shift in some Ukrainian officials' stance on the deal was first reported by Axios, according to the New York Times. We're signing an agreement hopefully in the next fairly short period of time that will assure us that we get $400 minus $500 billion back. President Donald Trump speaks about Ukraine possibly giving the United States minerals and ending the war. Meanwhile, the arrangements for an in-person meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are already underway, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said on Friday.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.